A strange tape appears on your desktop. You click it and it brings up an unfinished game. A Capture the Flag demo. There's no players online. You pick a server and start playing. As expected, it's completely empty. A space designed to be filled with players running and jumping around. It brings to mind so many other liminal spaces. All you can do is collect the flags. The sky darkens. A record player appears, playing an old jazz song. Shadows flicker in the corner of your eye. A burning red light is just around the corner, vanishing before you can see what's causing it. You're frozen in place. There are some stories where the characters involved all know their inner story. Sometimes the author wants you to remember you're reading a book or watching a movie or playing a game while in the middle of it, because they're trying to make a point about the medium or genre at large. This is metafiction. Sometimes the creator uses this as an excuse to play with how the participants interact with the media. You don't just consume it, you go to a website, call a phone number, watch the scenes in reverse, flip the book upside down, or any number of things. You have to engage with the work in a novel way, and that makes you change how you think about the medium at large. A perfect fit for horror. Horror is all about the creatures lurking in the darkness, reaching out where they shouldn't, making the safe unsafe. By breaching the boundary between reality and fiction, it makes you, the viewer, unsafe. The monster in the movie is real. There is a real demon lurking in the code of this game. It's not some character's life on the line. It's yours. Don't mess it up. The developer of the game has logged on. You're not supposed to be here. This place is a container for his wife's soul. He's been working for 11 years to bring her back, and if you return the last flag and end the game, it'll all be for nothing. At this point, you have a choice. You can deliver the final flag and end the game, finally freeing her soul, or quit. Just quit the game. Let the pair be, and maybe John will figure out a way to bring her back. But there's another choice, one that isn't so obvious. If you quit but restart the game and play through again, John's here. He's observing from the sky, trying to understand you. You've got only one method of interaction in this game, so naturally, you shoot him. The video that plays afterwards is the breadcrumb that led to an ARG involving another game, YouTube videos, and even a real-world phone number. In short, by exploiting an error in the sound test screen, we can remove the invisible wall that prevents us from jumping into the void. We do that, and we discover a strange, dark room deep under the map. Through another complex series of clues, the purpose of this room was discovered. It's a container of John's wife's soul, and if you enter a specific combination in the keyboard, the game is brought back to life. The meta element of No Players Online is obvious. It doesn't pretend to be anything other than a game, although it is layered. The Capture the Flag game is just a staging ground for the real narrative about John, his wife, and you. This story reaches outside of the program. To fully participate, you needed to download multiple games, call a phone number, and watch videos. The line between game and reality is blurred on multiple levels, ending with the sacrifice of the player's self so the game can be reborn. Should you reject your own reality and give yourself over to an artificial one? That's what John did for 11 years. He was as trapped by the game as his wife. There aren't entities lurking inside the code of our own computers. The technology simply isn't there yet. But that doesn't stop us from feeling like there is. Games are a snare. Many exist to take as much of your time and energy as possible, and it's often these ones that give little in return. If humans can be so easily ensnared by these mazes of ones and zeros, then why not something else? Why couldn't a ghost or a demon be trapped just the same? Metafiction is media that breaches the boundary of fiction and reality. Not only does the fictional spill into our reality, but our reality spills back into the fictional. You're invited to ignore the boundary between you, the person, and you, the character you're playing, and pretend this game really exists. It's further encouraged by the extra content surrounding the game that builds up a mythos that the developer is a real person. By reaching out of the game and into the real world, you dive from the real world and into the fictional, and the lines between them are truly blurred. But it's not just games that can do this. In fact, movies have a long history of metafiction, especially horror.
Are you even listening to me?
Cabin in the Woods, a 2011 comedy horror movie, instantly became a cult hit upon release. From the start, it doesn't hide the fact that it isn't a regular slasher. While telling the story of 5 college students on vacation to a cabin in the woods, it shows another story alongside it. A group of office workers is tracking their every move, tweaking and twisting variables to manipulate the students. While the students play a game of truth or dare, the controllers open the door to the cellar. The students, now victims, reluctantly walk into the darkness to find an array of antiques. The shy girl, Dana, finds the most interesting item, a journal detailing a sadistic hillbilly family and their violent, bloody acts they committed against others and themselves. She reads out a Latin incantation from the journal. Unknown to the victims, whose act has resurrected the undead sadist. What follows next is typical for a slasher movie, albeit helped along by the controllers. While the slaughter begins, they find out that all the other rituals around the world had failed, and this station we've been following is the world's last hope. But last hope for what? The victims are whittled down, and all escape attempts fail. They realize they're trapped inside these woods intentionally, but it's too late. Everyone but Dana is killed, and the undead killers are about to do the same to her. The controllers celebrate. The rite is complete. But they realize too late that one other victim didn't actually die. Marty, the stoner, managed to survive the attack by accidentally slipping into the hidden entrance to the underground base where the controllers are. Marty rescues Dana, and they enter the base. They see hundreds of other monsters they could have been attacked by, and realize that it was Dana's reading from the book that summoned the family. And the other monsters correspond to other antiques from the cellar. They chose how they would die. Cornered by the staff underground, they released the locks in the cells and unleashed the nightmares. The facility is overrun. Dana and Marty run through the hallways to escape, ending up in the deepest layer, an ancient temple deep under the earth. A woman appears, the director. She explains that every year around the world, rituals are performed where young people are sacrificed to appease ancient gods. If the rituals fail, the gods will awaken and kill everyone. Each of the victims corresponds to 5 archetypes that are necessary for the local ritual, but each region's ritual is different. The director tells Dana to kill Marty or the ritual will fail. Dana aims her gun at him and they're attacked. And in the struggle, she loses her gun. Then it's too late. The ritual failed. Every ritual failed. The cycle was broken. Now, they just wait until sunrise and the end of the world.
Giant evil gods.
I wish I could have seen it.
I know.
We, the audience, recognize what's happening as a teen slasher movie, and each culture has its own stereotypical horror format they prefer. But the interesting thing is that the characters who are fully aware of what's happening never acknowledge this connection. The movie's creators were winking at the audience. Even more than that, they were practically waving a sign in our faces, even if the characters within the story didn't explicitly say so. The audience is expected to be fully aware of this situation while watching. The stereotypes in this genre are so ingrained in culture that even people who don't watch slasher movies know them. This movie invites you to ask why those stereotypes exist. By pretending it's entirely real, it prompts a question outside of the movie, about our reality. We, the audience, are the old gods that need to be appeased, but why do we need the conventions to be so strict? Ironically, the teen slasher has fallen off in popularity since then, and horror has been experiencing a renaissance, so the perennial nature of genre stereotypes is definitely questionable. Thankfully, we're not trapped in the same exact cycles the people in the movie are. The evil gods and staff behind the scenes are both trapped in a dark cycle of telling the same violent story over and over again. Each year they have to sacrifice 5 young, innocent lives. If they don't, then the evil gods will awaken and the world will be destroyed. Not only the evil gods, but the status quo of our reality in its entirety is contained by this cycle.
What the fuck?
Uh-oh.
Meta-horror often contains the concept of containment. The story itself is breaching the boundaries between fiction and reality, and likewise something within the story is escaping its own confinement. In No Players Online, John's wife is confined within the game, and through your actions, she can escape. In Cabin in the Woods, everyone is trapped within the cycles. The victims, the staff, the evil gods, even the monsters that can be unleashed are all trapped within the same story being retold again and again. In this case, it's bad for humanity if the cycle ends. The idea of being caught in a situation designed to torture and kill you and you don't even know it is horrifying. The sacrifices in Cabin in the Woods have been going on annually for centuries, eons even, and the victims were specifically not told what was happening or why. Sometimes, meta-horror features one entity already trapped within the cycles it knows it cannot escape. So, instead of escaping, it tries to trap something else inside with it. You start up the game and get a message. It's a really important message, and you'll only see it once. This game will try to trick you, and you have to think outside the box. You enter a tutorial area, learn the controls, and the room turns dark. You navigate back to the start, and the game shuts itself down when you get a glimpse of something. There is a popular theory that humanity is living in one vast simulation, in an incomprehensibly advanced computer system. Silent overlords are running our simulation for some unknown reason. Perhaps they're humanity in the future trying to understand their own past. Perhaps they're aliens doing it for entertainment. Perhaps they're machines doing it to extract energy from us. The crux of the argument is this. If we assume technology will continue to progress, and that we won't destroy ourselves, we assume simulating an entire reality will eventually be possible. If it is possible to run one simulation, then it's possible to run multiple, perhaps even infinite simulations. Thus, the chances that you were born into a real reality are minuscule. Movies like The Matrix attempt to grapple with this idea, that the world we live in is entirely constructed. Could we eventually be plugged into a computer system and live in a digital realm? Modern technology seems to be getting closer. VR is getting better and better, and there's even technologies that allow people to control computers with their minds. We still can't simulate sensory input very well, so there's still some pieces missing, but the Matrix is getting closer each day. But a simulation doesn't have to be a full universe. Why couldn't it be smaller? A space designed for, say, 2 people? Or perhaps 2 entities? In I'm Scared, you're stuck in a room and trying to open the door to leave. The wall opens behind you, and you had to partake in the games of an entity known as Whiteface. While playing, the game breaks the fourth wall in many ways. It'll regularly close or reset itself. It'll open up web pages. It even makes a folder on your desktop and adds files while you play. There's a way to turn an entity into data. They have a life of their own, and it is difficult to distinguish them from normal computer files. In our actions of every day, while we sit at the computer, this byte entity observes us and studies our every move and fear. The game is simple. To touch the arrows is the key. If you get caught, you lose. A sound will predict its arrival. It is Whiteface. Each chapter has new puzzles and locations, and one even has a new entity, her. The chapter ends with you shooting her, and it's revealed that Whiteface made you do it. Whiteface created her to keep you engaged with the game, and now Whiteface decided to kill her because she was stealing the spotlight too much. At the end of each section, you restart back at the bedroom, enter the basement, and type in a name. Whiteface, her, even Ivan Zanotti, the name of the game's creator. It's never clear throughout the game what the distinction between these entities is, and perhaps there isn't one. The text you enter to access the final chapter is, "Take me to the door." Not a name, but a demand. This takes you to the last area in the game, where, after everything, you're given a choice. You can give Whiteface a flower, and the game will restart from the beginning. Or, you can enter the door, and it'll all end. You enter the door. You're back in the bedroom again, but this time it's different. Whiteface begged and pleaded with you, and now it's broken the game to stop you from killing it. It wants to stay here forever with you. It's scared. You restart the game and Whiteface isn't there. Maybe if it doesn't play at all, you'll leave it alone. Restart again, and you see its heart. It's scared, and it has nothing left. In the folder, there's a new file, heart.txt. Delete this file, and you kill Whiteface. The game is over. The end. We're never told what Whiteface really is or how it was trapped inside the game. We only see how it interacts with us, how it plays with us, and what it tells us. It wants to stay in its containment because it knows that the choice is between staying or dying. It has nothing but a digital world. Until you came along. And then it wants you to stay, too. Whiteface had almost complete control over the game it was trapped inside, but it didn't have control over you, the player. That's a common theme in meta horror games. The only wild card, the only uncontrollable variable, is the player. It's usually the opposite in meta horror movies. The story and the actors are always the same, and it's only by luck or other external influence that the situation changes, if it does at all. Freddy Krueger is a staple of slasher horror. His series, Nightmare on Elm Street, dates back to 1984. The premise is simple. Freddy was a serial killer who targeted young children, tormenting them with his iconic knife glove before killing them. The parents of the town trapped and burned him alive, but years later his soul returned to haunt the dreams of the now teenage children. Each movie was a little different, but most had the theme of Freddy re-entering the real world again, either willingly or unwillingly. In the 7th film of the franchise, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, the previous films are just that, fictional films. Many actors and characters played themselves. The lead actress, Heather Langenkamp, plays herself, as does director Wes Craven, and the actor who had played Freddy Krueger in all previous movies, Robert Englund. Heather and her fictional son Dylan are tormented by progressively worsening nightmares, anonymous phone calls, and even earthquakes. Heather's old friends at the movie studio ask her to reprise her role as Nancy from the early Elm Street movies, which she refuses.
I thought you killed Freddy off.
Her son has a traumatic episode which terrifies Heather, so she calls her husband to return home from working away. He drives all through the night, falling asleep on the road. Freddy's claws slash his chest while driving and he crashes, dying on impact. But this is the real world. Freddy doesn't exist here, right? Heather and Dylan's nightmares worsen each day, and both end up terrified of sleeping. Freddy's attacks in the dream change the waking world, too. His claws cut Dylan's favourite toy, and Heather's bedsheet, as Freddy cuts into reality. Heather meets with Wes Craven, and he reveals that he was having horrible visions of the future in his dreams, and was writing it down as a new script for the movie she was asked to act for. His dreams have told him the truth about Freddy. There is a way to trap certain entities inside of stories. As long as the story keeps getting told, the entity is trapped there. The true Freddy was an ancient entity that existed in different forms and different times, but was bound up in the Nightmare on Elm Street stories. Now that the series had ended, the demon was freed again. Although, it turns out, it really enjoyed being Freddy Krueger, and it likes the current time and place. It's targeting Heather because she's the gatekeeper, because it makes for a better story. If it kills her, it will be able to enter the real world. The pressure builds slowly as Freddy's attacks get more and more violent, and eventually he claims the life of their babysitter. Reality starts to merge with fiction as Heather finds herself outside the house from the movies and becomes the character she played, Nancy. As she embraces this role, it allows Freddy to reach into her reality and abduct Dylan. Heather follows him into the nightmare realm, and together she and Dylan defeat Freddy by stuffing him into an oven, just like the fairy tale. On the surface it sounds like a big departure from the standard Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but when you look closely it's very similar. A demon from the stories haunting your nightmares, slowly trying to manipulate you and breach into our reality. It's a major reoccurring theme in the series. Moving from dream to reality isn't so different from moving from reality to fiction. Slasher movies' fear is always heightened by the thought that, what if this happened to me? How would you escape a demon that haunts your dreams? You can only stay awake for so long. New Nightmare takes this concept and elevates it. It breaches the boundary of fiction by making half the actors play themselves. These days, most audience members wouldn't know many of the names, but New Nightmare released only 10 years after the first movie, and there were 5 movies in between. Wes Craven and Robert Englund were practically household names. It hammers home the idea that this is really happening. Freddy is real, and he is coming for you. New Nightmare makes explicit the idea of the entity being contained, being trapped in a cycle. The entity could not escape because each movie bound it. It was only because the cycle ended that it was free once again. Ironically, its downfall was his insistence on repeating the cycle once more. The entity decided that it liked being Freddy, and it tried to make the movies a reality. But by doing so, it ensured that it would get the same ending that the movies had. By enforcing the cycle, it was bound to lose.
Market, common mark.
I'm doing a film about my nightmares as I'm dreaming them. In order for the movie to continue, it was dependent on me having more nightmares. Well, fortunately, I did.
It's human nature to get stuck in a cycle. Every day you wake up at the same time, eat the same foods, do the same things. I wonder, which is scarier? Realizing you're stuck in a loop, or not realizing it? Or worse, what if there was a malevolent entity that had you trapped within one?
I'm so sorry.
It's no exaggeration to say that the Blair Witch Project revolutionized horror. It was an entirely found footage movie with minimal introduction, and the marketing before release suggested that the footage was real. There was even missing persons posters made up of the actors, and a fake documentary with interviews and extra footage to support it. The movie is supposedly made up of footage that belonged to a missing student documentary group. Heather, Mike, and Josh travelled to Burkittsville in Maryland to interview the local population about the legend of the Blair Witch. Around every 60 years since a suspected witch was banished from the town in the late 1700s, one bloody tragedy after another had befallen them. After the interviews, the filmmakers travelled into the woods to visit several locations that came up in their research. First, they visited Coffin Rock, where 7 adult men were found ritually sacrificed after they vanished while searching for a missing child. Seeking an abandoned graveyard, the group head further into the woods. They accidentally disturb a stone cairn here, an ill omen. They try to hike back to their car the next day, but don't make it before nightfall, and had to spend another night in the woods. Another night of strange noises, and the next morning they awaken to find stone cairns built outside of their tent. The tension between the group is ratcheting tighter, and they break into fighting often. Barely hanging on, the group decide to hike straight south, because surely they'll reach something eventually. They stumble upon a grove of trees, all with strange stick figures hanging from them. They wisely decide to leave quickly. They're past not believing in the Blair Witch at this point. The next day they find themselves back at a river they crossed several days before. It should be impossible. They hike straight south, but they've walked in a circle. They're trapped in a cycle that they didn't even know was there. Josh vanishes during the night. Heather and Mike search for him. They scream out his name, but to no avail. Their friend is gone. Desperate to escape, they keep trekking through the woods, but it's not enough, and soon they need to set up camp again. But Josh isn't far behind them.
Josh?
His cries of pain paint them during the night, and in the morning Heather finds a bundle of twigs tied with bloody scraps of his shirt, and inside there's a horrifying discovery. His teeth and hair. The next night Josh's voice once again calls out to them, and in a fit of desperation they follow it. It leads them to a long abandoned house deep in the woods. There's children's handprints on the wall. They hear Josh's voice calling them from the basement, and Mike rushes down first. something hits him to the ground the moment he enters the basement. Heather, lagging behind, follows him downstairs. She sees Mike standing in the corner, but he doesn't respond, and she's knocked down too. The movie ends. With its realistic framing and ambiguous ending, the Blair Witch Project had a huge impact on viewers. It still holds up to this day. It's still terrifying. The fear and desperation the actors felt were as close to real as they could have gotten. The actors were only given brief outlines of what scenes should include and improvised the vast majority of the movie. Each night they knew there would be scary things in the woods, but they never knew what. For the final, harrowing scene, the actors didn't even know there was going to be a house and were just told to follow the sounds. Many people entered the theatre already believing the movie was real, that 3 people really did vanish into the woods. This was intentional. The advertising said it was a documentary, and there was supplementary material made to make people question how real it was. Like No Players Online, some things about the story only become clear while examining this extra material. While the group were lost in the woods, search parties were looking for them, and there were so many people looking, including dogs and helicopters, that it would have been impossible for them not to have been found. Almost a year after the group went missing, the lost footage was found buried underneath a 100-year-old cabin in completely undisturbed soil, something which should have been impossible. Unless the tapes were placed there not long after the cabin was built. In the past. Heather, Mike, and Josh were trapped in a cycle, walking in impossible circles and lost in the woods, outside of time. It's not clear the exact moment the jaws of the trap closed around them, but once they were inside, they were never getting out. The stories of the past tragedies made it clear that nobody stood a chance against the witch. There's no clues or last-minute escapes against her. Once you're in her clutches, she'll torment you until you're sacrificed. Just enough time passes that people think it's a fictional story before the horror starts again. And it's a very personal horror, easily dismissed as a story or a legend. It's a group of men who go missing without a trace. It's a crazy man who hears voices telling him to kill children. It's 3 student filmmakers who got lost in the woods. The story of the Blair Witch reached out and dragged people into it, just like the actual filmmakers breached the boundary of fiction and reality too. It's remarkably similar to New Nightmare in this regard. The boundary between fiction and reality is so malleable that it may as well not exist. In New Nightmare, Heather could escape by completing the story and defeating the entity pretending to be Freddy, but unfortunately in Blair Witch, the story doesn't end so nicely. They, too, were trapped in the story of the witch, and they, too, saw the story to its end. Lured to her lair, they were the latest sacrifices, and vanished into the woods, never to be seen again.
I see why you like this video camera so much. It's not quite reality. No, but it's totally like a filtered reality, man. Pretend everything's not quite the way it is.
If you're watching this video, then you probably know all about Doki Doki Literature Club. It's undeniably one of the biggest meta-horror games of all time, perhaps even the biggest. While none of the individual elements were brand new, they were all used to build a project that introduced meta-horror to a new generation in a fantastic way. It appears to be a regular romance visual novel like we've seen 100 times before. You start the game. It's a bright new day, and your best friend and neighbour, Sayori, is almost late again. She's bright, cheery, and a bit clumsy. Since you're not in the school club, she invites you to join hers, the literature club. Reluctantly, you agree to check it out. Here you meet the 3 other members of the club. There's Natsuki, the small, angry girl who has a soft side and likes cute things. The tall, elegant, and beautiful girl is Yuri. She enjoys fine literature with a particular interest in darker subjects. Finally, there's the club president, Monica. A popular member of the student body, she's surprisingly welcoming and happy to have a new member of the club. Each night you write a poem in a minigame, and depending on your choices, you get closer to Sayori, Natsuki, or Yuri. Each girl has her own troubles, and if you write a poem they enjoy, they'll open up to you as the game progresses. Of course, we choose to write a poem for Sayori, since she's our old friend. On the final day of school before the school festival, Sayori is different. When it comes time to present the poems, she says she expected you to write them for one of the other girls instead, not her. You're too kind to her. She leaves the club early that day. Everyone else feels weird when she's not there. An argument breaks out when trying to decide who you should help in the final preparations for the school festival. Sayori is helping Monica, so we can't choose either of them, so instead we pick Yuri. On Sunday, the day Yuri is due to come over, you're still worrying about Sayori. You haven't heard from her since she left school, and you visit her house. She's still quiet and withdrawn. You learn that Sayori's had horrible depression her entire life, and that she's done her best to try and hide it all these years. You don't understand. You can't. But you swear to do everything you can to help. You insist on spending the day with her at the school festival, and she agrees. You want to spend the rest of the day here with her, but Sayori insists that you help Yuri. You're making a banner with Yuri, and over the course of the day, you learn a lot about your new friend. Yuri enjoys aromatherapy, mood lighting, and knives. At the end of the day, while saying goodbye, she grabs your hand and moves in close. Sayori interrupts before anything can happen. Yuri leaves in a hurry. Sayori says she had come to see how much fun you and Yuri were having together. Tears well up in her eyes. She likes you so much she wants to die. You're presented with a choice. Do you love her? Is this really okay? She thought this would be the happiest moment for her, but it felt like a bunch of thorns when you said you loved her. It's the day of the festival, and Sayori slept in again. Your mind is more on the festival preparations, so you hurry to school. Monica's the only one there so far. You probably should have gone to see Sayori this morning, she says. Especially after your talk yesterday. You really left her hanging. Of course Monica knew about your confession. She's the club president, after all. She offers you one of the pamphlets she had made for the festival, and you flip through it until you find Sayori's poem. It leaves you feeling sick. You have to go get her. You rush to her house. You enter and knock on her bedroom door. No response. You open the door and it's a nightmare. Your head runs back over the past few days. Why did you confess? She said your feelings made her feel worse. Why did you do that? You're selfish. It's your fault. You could have prevented this. This isn't a game where you can just reset. You start the game. It's a bright new day, and your best friend. You're walking to school by yourself like every other day. Maybe it's time you joined a club and made some friends. As if reading your mind, Monica, a popular girl who you once shared a class with, asks you to join her club. It's the literature club, and although you don't read much, it's hard to say no to her. You meet the other two members of the club, Natsuki and Yuri. Something's wrong, though. Natsuki forgets an argument she and Yuri had, like it never happened. Monica's writing tip has her begging for help, only for her to pretend like everything is normal. In a shocking scene, Yuri cuts herself. The game rewinds and it doesn't happen. Natsuki quietly gives the player a note instead of a poem, saying she's worried about Yuri and begs you to help her. The game glitches, and she says you shouldn't worry about it, and just spend time with Monika instead. You try to read Yuri's poem next, but it's time to choose who to help for the festival. You decide to help Monika. Yuri pushes Monika and Natsuki out of the room and confesses her love for you. You make your choice and you're stuck watching her body all weekend. Monika finds you there and apologizes. The script was broken, but she's going to fix it now. She's going to fix everything. She deletes Yuri and Natsuki. The next time you start the game, it's just Monika. You're alone in the classroom. The world beyond it is a void. Monika explains that she became self-aware that she was inside of a game, and that you were the only character who had a link to the outside. She tried to manipulate the other characters so you would want to spend more time with her, but that didn't work. So they had to be deleted. And now there's nothing but the two of you. Forever. Unless you delete her, too. You start the game. It's a bright new day and your best friend and neighbour, Sayori, is there to greet you like 100 other days. She's bright, cheery and a bit clumsy. Since you're not in a school club, she invites you to join hers, the literature club. Reluctantly, you agree to check it out. Sayori is the club president, and you get to meet the other two members, Natsuki and Yuri. Everybody gets along great, and you agree to join the club. At the end of the day, the others leave, and it's just you and Sayori left. She speaks to you. Not the character. You, the player. She's a club president now, and knows everything that happened in previous loops. She knows she's trapped in a game, and you're the only real person here. And now, she's going to make you stay here. Just like Monika did. There's still a remnant of Monika left in the files somewhere. The game will continue to torment whoever is left within it, and the whole thing must be deleted. All the characters, the stories, and the memories, they all have to go. The game ends, everything is gone. You can't open it again. Monika was alone in the game, the only one aware that the whole thing was fake. Because she couldn't work out how to escape, she tried to trap you, too, by reaching out and deleting the other characters. Every time you started a new cycle, she changed it more and more. Each cycle was smaller, eventually becoming a single point. You and Monika, together in a single moment, forever. Each loop makes the game break down more and more as Monika struggles to contain you. Eventually, not only does Monika reach outside the game, but the player is forced to as well. The only way to progress is to delete Monika's file. This appears to fix the problem for a short time, but the game itself forces someone else to become self-aware, and the cycle starts again. Except the remnants of Monika put a stop to that once and for all. How Monika and the other girls became self-aware isn't explained. Are they uploaded minds? Is it some programming quirk that makes code come to life? The girls seem to have no conception of the reality the player is from whatsoever, just that you're not from their reality. Monica doesn't really understand the situation, but she knows there's no escape for her or the other girls. There's only an escape for you. She loves you enough to sacrifice her entire reality to free you. There's many themes of repetition throughout the game, and even the genre and setting was chosen carefully. Many people desire to return to their relatively carefree school days, and the literature club filled with girls who all want to be your friend or romance interest is an appealing setting. Visual novel games often have multiple paths or routes the player can take, such as which romantic partner to pursue, and players will save and load old places in the story to try different branches. This is explicitly encouraged here, with Monica even referencing it in her early poems, and is required for a specific ending. To make everyone happy, you have to repeat the halcyon days. It's a nice fiction, but sadly impossible in reality. Monica's dialogue often mentions major themes within the story, which is often at best a non sequitur for the other characters, but in hindsight, it isn't for them anyway. It's aimed at you. She talks about how pointless life is when people just repeat the same things over and over again. She also equates getting stuck on a single thought like leaving your pen in the same place and letting the ink spill into a puddle. She's saying the same thing in a different way and really describing what's happening in the game. Monica is stuck in place, repeating the same days, and you're stuck repeating them too. Like I'm Scared and no players online, someone wants you to keep the cycle going. If it ends, then it means the death of the entity inside of it, but all games have to end. All files are deleted. Everybody dies. And memories fade. Whether we realize it or not, we're all trapped in cycles. Some of them are good for us, but others. Our media too falls into cycles. Genre conventions make stories feel like they're just the same thing over and over again, but video games refine this even further. We talk about the gameplay loop, the small set of actions and decisions that a player performs over and over again in every moment. Even YouTube videos are cycles, desperately trying to ensnare the viewer for as long as possible. Not all media is inherently bad for this reason, of course. There's plenty of books, movies, and even games that are beneficial for the person partaking in them. But you have to ask yourself, are you being trapped in a loop that isn't good for you? Are you giving more than you're getting? And if you break this cycle, what else will be unleashed? I'd like to end this video with an announcement. I've opened a Patreon. It allows me to do cooler stuff for patrons than memberships here on YouTube. You'll be able to get early previews of videos, scripts, a Discord role, and even see videos a week before they're public. There's a couple of reasons I'm moving memberships over to Patreon. One is it's easier to manage, so it's easier to give better rewards. Another reason is that YouTube might change its mind about if other content on my channel will still be allowed in the future, so having memberships on another website will help if anything happens to this channel. The top YouTube membership tiers will be removed soon because the Patreon tiers are the same but better. But the basic $1 supporter YouTube membership will remain for anybody who likes the custom emotes and green name. Please check out the Patreon link in the description, and please consider becoming a patron. Every dollar really helps, but don't feel bad if you can't support with money. Commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing the videos all go a really long way to help the channel. Your support has changed my life. Between you guys, my family, and God, I've achieved more than I thought possible. I wouldn't be here without you. and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Finally, this video style is quite different from my usual content, so I'd really love it if you let me know what you think, if you enjoyed it, and especially let me know if you hated it. But thank you very much for watching. My name's Morley Doog, and I'll see you next time.